Hello, everyone. My name is Alexandre Pacheco da Silva, and this is Law and Technology series, a set of interviews with incredible scholars to discuss the impacts of new technologies in the legal field. I'm a law professor at São Paulo Law School at Getúlio Vargas Foundation, and one of the coordinators of the Center for Education and Research in Innovation. Today, we have Professor Francisco de Elizalde from IE Law, where he is an associate professor and chair of legal studies. Professor Elizalde focuses studies in comparative private law, especially contracts and property law. He is a visiting professor at Koç University in Turkey and held visiting professorship positions at São Paulo Law School at Getúlio Vargas Foundation here with us and other colleagues of mine. He's a visiting scholar to the University of Cambridge and has conducted research at Harvard Law School and Max Planck Institute for Comparative and International Private Law in Germany. Professor Elizalde published papers discussing the legal framework of Uber in Spain, the uses of legal tech in consumer relations and small value chains. One of the things that amazes me regarding his career is how he is dealing with the changes that we are facing in our society, in different economic sectors, especially regarding his background on property law and contracts. And we are here to not only, of course, hear his brilliant career over the years, but also to hear from him his thoughts regarding the impacts of new technology in the legal field. So with no further ado, I would like to start with a question for you, Professor Elizalde. And I don't know if you mind myself calling you Francisco throughout this interview.
Of course.
So Francisco, my first question for you is, how, in your view, is technology impacting the legal field? And once again, thank you for accepting the invite that we sent it to you.
Thank you, Alexandre. I'm very happy to be here today. FGB is an institution which is very fond to me. Not only have a great experience of being there and have wonderful colleagues there, so I'm very happy to be today. My perspective, for those ones who are listening, my perspective is an outsider's perspective, or better, a person who is giving the first steps in the field. I come from more a classical background on contract law, especially also competitive contract law, and slowly and pushed by an initiative from the European Commission around three years ago that I had to coordinate. We started moving, or I myself started moving into these topics that I find fascinating, and I'm still learning about them. So in respect of the legal services, well, there is something that, and precisely what we are doing today through this online connection, is that it's quite evident to all of us that the pandemic has somehow speeded up the level of communication. So we are already having this conversation, but we increasingly are having meetings with clients that are held online, some court hearings that are also having place online. Even in China, there is a more consolidated online court that they try to push forward in other fields. But this, I would say, is the basic level of interaction of technology with our profession as lawyers. There is probably still not mainstream, but increasingly getting mainstream, is a more sophisticated impact of technology in the legal field. And I'm referring, for example, we see how technology is supporting due diligence processes in M&A, which tasks that have traditionally been conducted by junior lawyers in rooms full of papers. Then they move to a more e-phase. And now increasingly this task is being replaced with the support of AI technology. We also see this in the process of document review and document signing, where the technology is really supporting repetitive or more routine tasks that have in the past were done by lawyers, which in the end is not cost efficient, not to have lawyers doing this simple task, and increasingly technology is being replacing them. And we also see this, for example, with the creation of new markets. So increasingly we have marketplaces where those ones offering legal services connect with people who in the past did not address the problems to lawyers. So kind of creating new markets, and technology is facilitating this, and of course creating new approaches and also new participations of lawyers who are more or less able to participate in this market. A step further probably could be the ODR, the online dispute resolution mechanisms. There was one important in British Columbia some time ago. The European Union passed a regulation, the ODR regulation, on precisely trying to foster this online solution of problems. And also going to the field of legal tech, probably was more internal legal tech, but also external legal tech is those companies that provide legal services in litigation or connected to litigation. Of course, going to court is still mostly a physical or human activity, but there are lots of companies I'm referring now to the European Union level, lots of companies that are providing services, especially to consumers, and seeking redress for claims that previously were not addressed, and hence they remained unaddressed. Typical claims, well, now we don't fly as we did, but the typical claim is the flight delays. There is a European regulation whereby you have rights to a certain compensation depending on delay, cancellation, or denied boarding of flights. And well, based on the amount most consumers did not claim, which makes sense from a perspective of what's called the rational apathy. For some amount, you didn't start complaining. But now there are lots of legal tech companies that handle those types of claims massively. And on this, I have good information because last year, we conducted a survey to all the participants in this market in the European Union, and it was not rare that each company handed out 30,000, 40,000 claims, and with almost or with no lawyers at all. So, of course, this is creating new participants in the market. It's in somehow giving more rights to consumers, but certainly changing the profession. We didn't expect that previously non-lawyers, or even in this case AI-supported technology, would define whether you had a plausible claim, whether by viability of the claim, and second, estimate the compensation that you had with a great success in court, which is what is really proved the accuracy of the legal service. Of course, this is changing the market. If we think probably a step further, Estonia is doing some experiments on further automation in the administration of justice. The European Union and most member states are pushing forward to a more autonomous or at least AI-supported adjudication and also administration. So increasingly, the technology is taking a central or a more central role in the provision of legal services. Of course, this creates a problem in respect of which there are still certain gaps, which is the regulation of the profession by law societies, by bar associations, depending on each legal system. Is if these non-lawyers are providing legal services, what should we do with them? Should we relax the regulation? Should we treat them as lawyers? Should we not treat them as lawyers and hence have the regulation unaltered? And this, as I'm sure you know, has given place to litigation in the US, in Germany, in different countries. So I really see that from probably some years ago, a phenomenon that was quite, let's say, marginal is slowly getting mainstream and is touching the day-to-day activity of many lawyers.
Very interesting, Francisco. And another question that I have for you, it is there a field of study that we can call law and technology? Because we usually heard here in Brazil that law and technology, it's not a field. It is just a way to discuss how technology is impacting different areas from law. So I would like to hear from you if you consider that there is or there is not a field called law and technology in your perspective.
Well, that's a difficult question. Depending what I answer, it could have different impact. So I do believe that, and this I will now explain myself. I think that the field is necessary, but the content of the field will change or should change in the future. So I think that the field exists. It's good, and as I told you, I come from the outside, so I can explain you with my own experience. I think it's good that there are people, there are lawyers that probably interacting with data scientists, that the data scientists and other experts are at the forefront of these topics. Okay, as well as I understand that it's very good that other professionals, other colleagues remain in more traditional fields, which continue to be central, will continue to be problematic. But it's good that a field as such has its own salience, because it requires its own reflection. And also, there are some central and common thematics that if you, let's say, disaggregate them and put them in different fields, you can lose part of the understanding. And I'm referring, for example, the question of transparency, you referred to artificial intelligence, the issue of causation, so that machines tend to think in terms of correlation, and from that they get causes, and this is not always accurate. The problem of data protection, which is, of course, it's a field by as such, but with technology, it gets a new importance. There are more and others that I mentioned that are cross-field or cross areas. So it's important that there is this discipline which tackles all these problems. Of course, and it will go a step further, there is could be a broad regulation that also affects different sectors, not only law, but also beyond law. We can see this in artificial intelligence, for example. The European Union is proposing a regulation for artificial intelligence as such, and this tackles criminal law, contract law, and not even law, production of machines, everything. So it's good that lawyers are focusing on that. It is also true that, let's say, to give a bit of support to the other argument, there are some problems that affect specific disciplines. For example, if you think of the creative pieces of work of artificial intelligence, well, this could tackle IP, and it could be a problem of experts in IP. You could also think of the question of smart vehicles and the liability that could arise, which could be an issue for torts, for example, and also for administrative law if you were to regulate. But there's other problems that still are cross fields. For example, the question of blockchain applied to the administration in general, we could affect registries, it could also affect notaries, it could also affect the judiciary. Well, this is a problem per se that does not fall in one specific category. There are others, going back to what I'm saying, that do. For example, there was some recent case interesting in Germany connecting smart washing machine that ordered different products without the consumers being informed in every single purchase, which is what European Union consumer law asks for. So that's a problem of consumer law, and probably it could be dealt with any other general knowledge. But that, going back to that, I insist, I believe it's good. And with the speed of evolution of technology, I don't know if this perspective of analyzing the impact of technology cross sectors will ever disappear. I cannot know. Okay, if it were a more stable subject matter of analysis, probably would tell you yes. But the pace and the speed of technological development is such that it's very difficult to foresee. But this, as saying, is one perspective. The other perspective that I think that the law slowly will have to, or is good that starts moving there, is trying to see law and technology as those in law and economics see their field. And I try to explain myself. So it's trying to see the suitability of law for its interaction with technology. Okay, so, and this, as it happened in law and technology, in law and economics, will probably first have a more theoretical and cross-discipline approach. And then it could move to competition, contracts, administrative law, etc. And what do I mean by this? And I give my opinion because I'm doing research on this and I have recently published on this, is I don't think that all legal rules are equally suitable for automation, taking into consideration how the technologies operate. For example, blockchain that operates in a binary way, or taking into consideration how machine learning operates. Not everything would be as easy as other rules to, let's say, be automated. Think, for example, saying the case of the flights is not a coincidence that almost 50% of the legal tech companies in the European Union market deal with that regulation. Why? Because it's a very simple regulation. Has the flight arrived late, yes or no? And the compensation is standardized, they're fixed amounts. Is that regulation as easy to automate as a contract that says the parties must act according to good faith? Or that compensation must be individualized, proven by expert, etc.? My opinion is not. So this opens a great field for law and technology. There's a place where lawyers in the different fields should reflect on their own rules and then test them with the aid of artificial intelligence or blockchain, or depending on the application that it has. And I think that, once again, as it happened to law and economics, I think that there's a great field in there. We are, after a preliminary assessment precisely on that European regulation on flight delays, we are now moving to an experiment with data scientists to see the possibilities of automation and try to then do a pilot experiment in court, so as to ease the job, the labor of courts in claims that take the time, but they are not so sophisticated. So I think that would be a broad field for law and technology, once again insisting that the current approach, I don't think that it will disappear, or better, that the need of it will cease to exist in the near future.
That is fascinating, Francisco, especially regarding the experiment that you mentioned throughout your answer. And I have a third and final question for you. What should a law school do regarding the impacts of technology in the legal field? What would be the project or your view on a strategy that a law school could adopt regarding the challenges that we have in front of us?
Great. On this, also I would rely a bit on what we've been doing, because I was convinced by it, as I told you before. I'm outsider, and I was convinced by it, and I'm seeing that the positive effects on our students and also in our colleagues on this. So the first perspective that I think is needed in law schools is that our students learn and start to think about law in terms of technology. And connecting to the previous question of law and technology as a field, the current reflection still heavily relies on how should we regulate it? How should we regulate artificial intelligence? How should we regulate the possible copyright of AI creations? How should we regulate consumer protection when there is interaction with technology, something that already the European Union is taking certain measures. And I do think that that perspective can be or should be done in two different manners. On the one hand, with specific law and technology subjects or courses, probably in more advanced level, say senior years of the, let's say, normal undergrad law program or even master programs, once the students already have some basis on what the law is about. And a second perspective is also possible, is to integrate in each and every single course a perspective of the problems that technology poses to the course. As I was telling you before, so 3 years ago, we received a project from the European Commission to think about the regulation of artificial intelligence and the impact of artificial intelligence cross-curriculum. So myself and almost many of my colleagues, we started to reflect on this from the perspective of contract law, administrative law, European Union law, commercial law, even, of course, legal thought, and even the history of law. So where very interesting examples came on this. And I think that this has been good for the lawyers, for the scholars, as we had to do the effort of thinking that, and also for students who now naturally think and analyze any problem that they have, which is what we lawyers do, including, of course, those ones that have a technological component. The second perspective is to, of course, try to support their technological skills. Now it's getting a bit darker here. Try to support their technological skills. And this, for example, our students, they receive specific training on technology, on the tools themselves. And also it's important that they interact with the technology in respect of law. To put you an example, so a couple of years ago, while the pandemic arose in the middle, we did an experiment with a company that's a blockchain company, and we tried that deals with smart contracts. And in the contract law course, we prepared a competition, as we call the smart contracts competition. So students had to, and this I think is the interesting part, students, of course, they had to deal with the technology, they had access to their platform, it was fantastic, but also students had to think on how to draft a contract that can be easily embedded in blockchain and have the capacity to communicate and to interact with programmers, etc. I think that was a fantastic experience, because even though we are still lawyers and our core is the law, we need to be able, as lawyers, we are able to interact with companies, with business persons. We need to be able to act with the persons who will embed the law in a code. And I think that was a fantastic experience. And probably the third step that I'm hoping that we see the light not very far from today is we need to, especially with the new generations that have born already in the digital environment, unlike me, for example. But we need to foster their capacity and for entrepreneurship, but legal entrepreneurship, okay? So, of course, there are more traditional offers and options in the market, but I believe that a very well-trained student in law and technology will be able to launch their own startups in different areas of legal profession that will, in the end, lead to further innovation to those markets. And I think that universities, I know this is costly, but universities and law schools should support legal incubators. Incubators by students that try to produce a change in the field of law and technology.
Thank you very much, Francisco. It was wonderful. It was wonderful to hear your thoughts, the projects, the experiments that you're conducting and participating at IE. And for us, it was a privilege to assess and reflect with you on your thoughts regarding this field and help us to create awareness regarding that topic here in Brazil and in other countries that will access this video. So thank you very much again to be a part of this project. And for the people that are watching us, see you next time. Thank you for watching.
Thank you for the invitation. Thank you.